Train line, my hometown. There are days I wait for night to come and fall asleep, just to wake again. Oh, to walk beside an honorable man. Honey, sometimes I just do the best that I can. And you show me a little bit of mercy, of mercy, of mercy, more than a little bit of mercy. Striving for and go round when you say trumpet sound, standing where our fathers stood, and their ways to make them good. Oh, but where is the heart of an honorable man?
She was on the
Honey, sometimes you just do the best that you can. And I'll show you a little bit of mercy, of mercy,
oh, there's Jenny.
of mercy, more than a little bit of mercy.
You put this on YouTube then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
you edit it and then...
Yeah. I haven't been having much success lately with my computer. It's updated the iMovie thing. You know where to look down here where my YouTube is.
Breathe out the sun for ourselves in this race. If you'll show me a little bit of mercy, of mercy, of mercy, more than a little bit of mercy, and I'll show you a little bit of mercy, of mercy, of mercy, of mercy, of mercy. More than a little bit of mercy. Thank you very much to the Drop and the Dream. Can we have another thank you to them, please? We've started a bit late because that was such a beautiful sound here on such a beautiful afternoon. And welcome to the official opening of the Brian Law Peace Bench in Whitstable. Welcome. I'm Richard, and I'm just going to introduce people this afternoon and say a few comments about the campaign to link things together. We first started the campaign 3 years ago now, just after Brian died, and the link to his years in Whitstable became more apparent than they had been before. And then over the last year we've been much more intensely fundraising and campaigning to get the bench here in place. If anyone wants to see the full story of how that campaign has unfolded, there's a whole book of all the press cuttings, etc. behind here. Do have a look. I have to say, actually, it's unusual perhaps to say a thank you to our local newspapers, the Whitstable Gazette and the Whitstable Times, because in amongst all the stories about seagulls stuck in chimneys and things of that kind, they have consistently reported on the campaign at all its stages, and that's a very, very important thing. You don't always get that from local papers, particularly when you're doing something that's a bit different and a bit less mainstream. So thank you to them. And you'll see that a lot of the story is told through cuttings from those papers. So why did we do all this? Well, we wanted... We obviously wanted to pay tribute to the sacrifice and the hardship and the commitment that Brian Hoare showed by camping for 10 years, an unbelievable 10 years, in Parliament Square in London. And that is a physical feat that probably ranks alongside an early, I don't know what, a climber of Everest or whatever. It's a major physical feat, and it took the most extraordinary resilience and determination to do that. And so we're here to pay tribute to that. But also we want to celebrate the legacies that he left from his peace camp. Obviously, the idea of striving to wage peace. When the bench is fully uncovered, you'll see one of his favourite sayings was about waging peace. And so we want to give tribute to that. But also, Brian stood up very strongly for the great tradition in our democracy of free speech and the right to peaceful protest. He had to fight very hard for those, but he stood up for them over those 10 years, and that's something that we are celebrating here today. And finally, he also is a very important reminder of the rule of law, and the rule of law in a very particular way, in the way that it protects people who are maybe in a minority position or are standing up for something that the establishment doesn't like. And Brian, time and time again, went to the courts, stood up for his rights, and managed to keep his camp going, much against what some people wanted. So those are legacies which Brian has left and which the bench is a symbol to here in Whitstable. Now, by having his public camp, he obviously, in a sense, made himself into public property. But of course, he wasn't public property. He was a man, a father, a brother. And so we're going to start this afternoon by hearing from some of his family. And I'm very pleased to welcome, first of all, his second son, Pete Hoare, and his daughter, Maria Hoare, who are going to say the next few words.
I'm not as tall as this. Hello. I just want to say thank you very much for having us here on this special day. It really is special for us. And please excuse us reading off our speeches. We're both a little nervous, so please go easily and clap loudly. When Richard first contacted us here, we thought it would be great to have a memorial to Dad, and that this would be special because it was a place so closely related to Dad's past. We used to visit Nana and Uncle Richard just along the coast in Swellcliffe. Dad would drive us down here in his red minibus to his mum's house. We'd all pile out and race to ring the doorbell first. It was lovely coming away from the city to such a beautiful place. And later, all the way from the Midlands, still worth the journey. And we walk along the promenade and skim stones into the sea. And Nana would be sat in her wheelchair watching over us from at the top. So it was great to spend time here together as a family.
Clearly, there's been much continued support to get this far. We'd like to thank every single one of you for your individual contribution to make this project a success. From the very beginning, in deciding that a bench would be a suitable memorial, deciding that it would be more special than a flat-packed IKEA job, to finding a designer, craftspeople, and finally installation very recently. It has been no mean feat getting this all together. We, as Dad's family, would like to thank Richard, Julie, and their dedicated team of fundraisers for their many hours of hard work, almost over 3 years, to make this idea a reality.
This is the first time we've been here to see and to touch the bench. After seeing the photos of it, I hope it's going to be better than it was in reality. They've cunningly hidden it from us today, so we look forward to unveiling it in a minute. We hope that the craftsmanship, I know it's a lot of care was taken into making it, so we hope that it will last for a long, long time, so many people can come and enjoy it and take a moment to reflect. Please bring some cushions, just so we don't wear it away. It'll last even longer then. There was a lot of thought put into the whole process, especially when it came to deciding where it was going to be put. So having it here looking out to the sea is just a lovely idea. Nobody will know this, but just before Dad went to London, he bought a sailing boat and he was in the process of renovating it, and his next mission was going to be to sail to Africa on a missionary trip. So it really is quite special to be on the coast for us as well. Sadly, obviously he didn't make that one.
For us to sit here today and look out to sea is one of the most peaceful places to imagine and remember Dad, in stark contrast to where he spent the last 10 years of his life on Parliament Square. Maybe if he'd been here shouting on his megaphone, he would have had a more meaningful, sensible reply. We hope that we can follow Dad's example to make a difference to other people's lives and stand up for what we believe in, and that it would be special for people who live and visit here too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, thanks to Pete and Maria. We were always really delighted to have the full support of the family throughout the campaign. We started by seeking that right from the outset. We knew that some family, like Brian's brother Richard and his sister, are both living still close to Whitstable. So we made sure that we had full contact with the family throughout the campaign. It's great to have them here, and they took part earlier in the fundraising and the benefit we had and that sort of thing. Now, I'm going to make a slight change to the order of things. Having congratulated the local press, I can't turn down their opportunity to do they want to do a photo call. So before we have a proper few words from our next special guest, we're going to actually do the ribbon cutting and a couple of photos. I hope you'll all bear with that for a few minutes. But just before we do that, I want to just explain that our special guest who is going to cut the ribbon with Pete and Maria is Mark Wallinger, the artist who recreated Brian's Peace Camp as an artwork and won the Turner Prize for it in 2007. Now, we'll have more about that in just a minute, because I'm afraid you're just going to need to watch for a minute. Firstly, the ribbon cutting, and then a couple of photos of the family with Mark, and I'd like Chester Yang to be in the photo around the bench in just a moment, please.
I might not get back.
Come round this end. Don't you come round there. Come round here. Come round here. One hand on there, one hand on that.
That's wonderful. Guys, can we just have each camera? That's absolutely brilliant, thank you. Right, if you can just all look to us. Sorry.
One more on this end. Keep it so we can see the name Brian. Oh, Brian.
This way for everybody's perfect.
Down here, everybody. Thank you.
One back this way.
Thank you.
That's having everything.
When he dropped his dad off at Parliament Square, which was actually on the 2nd of June, so like tomorrow, but in 2001, so 13 years ago. They didn't know how long Brian was going to be there. He just dropped him off with the camping stuff, and so I think it was probably quite a surprise when it went on for 10 years. But the thing was that not everybody welcomed it, and Brian's protest was very much a one-person protest initially, where he wasn't part of a political group, he wasn't part of any particular movement of any kind. He set about it by himself, and when people do that, they're in a vulnerable position, because all sorts of forces and powers that be can obviously impact upon them. He managed to maintain it, but what was very important, of course, was the support that he began to get. And that was on the one level day-to-day support, because Brian very rarely left the camp. One time when he did go was actually to Pete's graduation ceremony, and some of you may have seen in the local papers a lovely picture of Brian in his famous hat and Pete in his waterboard at his graduation. But Brian depended on people bringing food and bringing things like that to help him to keep the camp going. And then of course 2 million of us turned up in 2003 to protest against the Iraq war. And I guess after that, I imagine Brian felt very uplifted by that, but I think he must have been a bit disappointed afterwards when we all went home again and didn't stay there until the war didn't happen. Brian did stay there, he carried on. And then one of the very important things that happens to give people support is when those who are prominent and have status in society act in support of them. And our next speaker is Mark Wallinger. And Mark, of course, being a very established artist already, when he decided to do what he did in terms of recreating the camp as an artwork, that was a hugely supportive step for Brian's Peace Camp. And so I'm absolutely delighted that he's been able to join us here today. So please welcome Mark Wallinger.
Hello, it's an honour and a privilege to be here today to be at the unveiling of this peace bench. I think it's a wonderful idea to be able to sit here and contemplate the immensity of Brian's life and achievements, really. As has been said, I mean, Brian was there from 2001 and for 2001 to 2003 I was in Berlin, so I missed the big protest here, but it was strange coming back to Britain and finding that there was so little dissent about the war being waged against Iran and Afghanistan, and Brian's protest was wholly remarkable and incredibly courageous, unprecedented thing, and I just became well, I crossed the road. A lot of people didn't cross the road to see what Brian had to say, and in the world of embedded journalism and self-censorship, this was a mighty document against an illegal war, and not least it's documentation of the horror that had been meted out to children who were born with deformities as a result of depleted uranium from the first Gulf War. The whole thing was a complete case against the stupidity of invading another sovereign nation, and I think it's particularly apt that on the back is reproduced one of the more touching parts of Brian's process. It's the kids, and I think this is what Brian felt as a kid more keenly than anything else, was the slaughter of the innocents of children, yeah, what happened as a consequence of our actions, and it still beggars belief to me till today that Brian should have been such a lonely protester there throughout what was illegal. But on a more cheerful note, I think this is the most wonderful location to be able to think about someone who waged peace, as it says on the side. Anyway, so I think it's a wonderfully beautiful sunny day to celebrate Brian's.
Thanks, Mark. That was really very nice. Thank you. Throughout the fundraising, we wanted to make sure that the link to Whitstable was at the forefront of this. I'm not going to pretend that everybody who lives in Whitstable is 100% behind the bench project or behind what Mark Hall did. Brian Hall did. You don't get 100%. But what we wanted to do was make sure that this was very much a local campaign. And so we didn't use internet fundraising or anything like that. It's all been done by person-to-person fundraising, and more than 80% of the people who bought the peace vouchers that we sold to raise the bulk of the funding lived within the CT postcode. And of course that was supplemented by a benefit event at the Labour Club, and we've had stalls and selling the badges and that kind of thing. It's all been locally based, and we've emphasised that throughout because we wanted to celebrate not just Brian and what he did, but also Brian's link to Whitstable. And we wanted to do that in a way that we thought that Brian probably would have liked it to be done. So we've not had any, big sponsors or anonymous donors or anything like that. It's all been done by ordinary people making small or modest donations. We said when we were selling the peace vouchers that they would cost from £1 to £20. It was up to people what they paid. No one can pay more than that. And so what we've got here is a project that is lots of people gathering together to achieve something that they could not have achieved by themselves. And throughout it all, we maintain the very close link to Whitstable. And so what I'm very pleased, our next speaker, many of you will know, is Julia Seath, and she knew the Hall family well when more of them were in Whitstable, and so she's going to say a few words next. So welcome to Julia.
I hope I'm not repeating things that the other people have said, because I've only just managed to get here from a family event. I think it's fitting that we're gathered here today to remember Brian and to celebrate his life and the person that he was, because it was 13 years ago tomorrow that he started his peace camp in Parliament Square, and it was during the month of June that he died 3 years ago. And I confess to feeling something of a fraud standing here in the presence of Brian's family, because although I met him a couple of times, I didn't really know him. But I did know his mother Iris and his brother Richard. And in knowing Iris particularly, I think I came to know a little about Brian and what shaped him in his earlier life. Like his mum, Brian was a committed Christian, as indeed am I. Brian's deep faith took him to places that most of us wouldn't be able to go or even dare to go. We are not all people of faith, but of many or none. Yet regardless of belief, what Brian did resonated with people all around the world. There is a long list of men and women peace activists who have dedicated their lives in the cause of making peace. Peace-making. And I make this distinction between that and keeping the peace, which successive governments of all colours trot out to justify being armed to the teeth and prepared for war and conflict. Brian believed in the obligation under the Human Rights Act, something which is now in peril, to protect life, and in the obligation to challenge war crimes. This comes at great cost, a great personal cost to the individuals and their families, and to their family lives. I was at Greenwood Common, not permanently, but periodically for short spells. And I saw there the personal sacrifice of women who gave up their normal lives to challenge and defy the government, believing that they were upholding the law, believing in the power of non-violent direct action, taking on the law in courts across the land, just like Brian did. Brian believed he had to be where people were suffering because of war and genocide. He witnessed the result in the killing fields of Cambodia, and he was jailed for not having a visa. And I remember the anguish it caused his mum at the time, and I'm sure to his wife and his children. Protest is legitimate, and it is honourable, and it's what you do when those you or others have elected don't listen. It's as relevant today as it has always been. Peace is a frail flower, and we should all stand together to protect it, like Brian. May you be inspired by him, and may the inspiration that he gave to others resonate down through the years to others who read about him and hear about him. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Julia. That was a very moving contribution. Thank you. And very special welcome to behind me, the Whitstable's Mobile Garden Rally, which has turned up very good timing to add to the Julia mentioned frail flowers. Well, there's no frail flowers in that, I can assure you. They're all very solidly on wheels and on move. So welcome to them. I hope you'll stay with us, adding to the photo opportunities. Julia talked about the risks and the challenges faced and the legacy that we all need to work with, and of course that goes on and on afterwards. And for our last speaker, I'm pleased to welcome Chester Yang. Now Chester has made a film, a documentary film, about the 10 years. He'll tell you more about this, but all I wanted to say in introduction was that he told me while we were gathering today that actually it's proving quite difficult to get the attention of the media, the mainstream media, etc., to the film, because again it raises challenging issues, raises some of the matters that people don't want to face up to, don't want to talk about, and so it isn't something that is all in the past that we're talking about here. The same challenges that Brian faced are still being faced by lots of people today, and Chester, maybe you'll come and tell us a bit more about the film and the challenges you faced on that.
Thank you very much, Richard. First of all, I would like to say thank you for inviting me to come here today to witness this wonderful ceremony. To me, Brian is a special man. He's a man of inspiration, and he inspired me to look at the world in a different way. I met Brian in December 2003 in the anti-war protest, and he struck me as a man who wanted to tell the world about what's going on in the British policies, the policies about the Middle East that the Parliament was designing at that time, and the brew to go to war, and all the conviction that was propagated by our government at that time to convince us that, yeah, it was a good idea to go to war so we can stop a really powerful enemy. And Brian can see all through those policies, and he stood up. And gradually I tried my best to engage with him, to ask him questions as a filmmaker. But all the time he was always busy. There were lots of people who always wanted to talk to him while he was in the camp there. And most times he to say, no, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. But at some point, you know, he saw me persisting and I really struggling to engage with him, to be close to him in a way. But I can see that he didn't trust the press as much. Looking back now, I think it's because they didn't portray him the way he wanted them to portray him. They didn't speak for him. They didn't amplify his voice enough to be able to inspire a lot of people to join him outside Parliament Square and protested and toppled up the government at that time, so we would not have gone to war in Iraq and Afghanistan. So in a way, he didn't trust a lot of people at some point, and I can understand that. So I decided, okay, if Brian doesn't speak to me, then I will have to just be there every time there's a protest and film the anti-war movement that was going on within that space of time, which is nearly 10 years. So eventually in 2010, when the new coalition government came in at that time, I was filming a protest during the May Day demonstration, and I asked him again if he can give me an interview. And so he said, no, I'm not ready. So I said, okay. So I just hung around. And it came to a point when he just looked at me and I looked at him and he asked me, are you ready? And I said, yeah, I'm ready. So I got the camera out and I was like, put it on, and then all of a sudden it started to rain. I was like, oh God, you know, I don't have a cover, so I got my jacket out, I covered it with my camera, and he had the umbrella, and then that's it. And he spoke to me. And as a filmmaker, when you go to the editing room, you have to watch the footage on and on and on and on. And he spoke to me 1,000 times, and I listened to all those words, and I hung on to them. And it was actually very challenging to piece up a film, bringing it together and kind of tell a story from all fragmented protests that went on in the square. So, yeah, his message was a powerful one. A message of peace, a message about the children that are dying right now as we speak today. Thousands of children, you know, I don't want to name the countries, but we all know. And Brian stood up for that. He stood up for peace. Because at the end of the day, according to him, we're not learning our lessons. The lessons of war, destruction, the traumas, and the effect of that on our society. And I knew, according to what he told me, he suffered because of that. His family suffered because of that. And that's why he decided to take, you know, to the street and camped outside Parliament and gave up his life, you know, and deprived his own family of himself, of his love. And standing here today is an honor, you know, among these wonderful people. And I thank you so much. Please come over at, I think it's at 3 o'clock, to see the film War Matters. And it will be really a good insight into Brian's life and also the anti-war movement. Thank you so much.
Right, yes, 2 things I want to do. I'll do the second one first, which was, as Chester says, after this event, from about 3:15, if you'd like to, we're going into the upstairs room at the Oyster Stores, and we're very pleased to have both some images provided by Mark Wallinger that he's going to talk a bit more about, and also to watch Chester's film, War Matters, and Chester will also engage in a Q&A about the film. He would like to do that afterwards, and there's a bar there, etc., so you can have a drink, and I hope people will join for that. We have actually got tickets for that. Now there are tickets left, and so if you would like to go, just head over there and you can get tickets when you go in. We are asking for a £3 donation for a ticket or £5 for a pair. All of that goes into the campaign. The Oyster Company has donated the room for free. So it's not going to any other cause than the campaign itself and the costs of the campaign. So I hope people will join that. So what have we ended up with? Well, as Mark said earlier, we've ended up in the most beautiful location. One of probably the biggest sky you get anywhere in Whitstable, and the best view of Whitstable's fantastic sunsets. And what we've ended up is in that particular position, a lasting symbol of peace, and a place that is absolutely dedicated to peaceful reflection. And those are now part of Whitstable's landscape, which is very good. And secondly, we've made sure that Brian Hoare and his achievements and the legacies he has left are part of Whitstable's rich history. And so those two things, changing the landscape, the places, and changing the people and the history of those people of Whitstable, is a very important thing that many, many people are proud of in the town. And we've done this by many people working together. This is a great communitarian success story of lots of people working together to do more than they could do separately. And what we now need to do with this, as various people have said, is keep up that vigilance. Keep up the vigilance for peace. We see all too readily in Ukraine, around Ukraine at the moment, the warmongers on both sides itching to make more of it than a peaceful approach might make. So far, it's a half and half situation, but we need to keep vigilant about that. And we also need to hold our politicians to account. Many of you will have seen in the last couple of days that there's a classic attempt to further cover up the real reasons behind the war, with the Chilcot inquiry being sat on and being partially exposed. We're not fit to have the full information, apparently. Certain people are, certain people who've seen it, they can have the full information and decide we shouldn't. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't feel that's good enough. I think we're all perfectly able to judge the full information. We don't mind what the American president said, but we do care what our Prime Minister said. And hoping we can get the bike back.
He's eating stones, mate.
Jawad Al Nawab, and he has a special song that he's going to finish the event.
Okay. I really wasn't expecting to be here playing a song today. Well, I might try and shout to the voice and go. Anyway, I was just making my way to Faversham to get the train back to London, where I live now. But I spent my teenage years in Herne Bay. And having a mother from South London and a father from Baghdad, when the first Gulf War, the second Gulf War started in 1990-91, it was obviously a big trauma. To be fair, to use that word at the time. Anyway, and I was deeply affected by it, particularly the period of the sanctions when I think you yourself mentioned about the depleted uranium. And it really affected my sense of where I belonged in terms of myself. I wasn't expecting there to be September the 11th and the Second World War. And as an aside, I spent 3 years of my childhood in Afghanistan, going to an American school, so that's also a bit surreal. Anyway, to cut this long story short, I did in the 90s spend one night opposite Downing Street, which I found as a vigil against the sanctions with some other people. Found it quite intimidating, to say the least. There were no loos nearby either, which made it a bit of a problem in the middle of the night. And I did cross the road once, and spoke briefly to Brian many years later. It's sad to say it was many years later. I think I said, would you like a coffee? He said, yeah. And I just went over the road where, is it Portcullis Houses? There's a coffee shop, bought the coffee, took it back to him, and that was it. But it's very sad to think that these wars are still going. As someone much wiser than me said, hatred never ceases by hatred alone, but by love alone is healed. That is the ancient law. So anyway, this is a story, a little story about the estuary, and you can hear it, in Iraq.
The bridge, it's a biblical one. Round faces all around me. Oh, the sun so high, it's nearly burning my eyes, and there's no breath of home in my mind. But I just gotta glimpse of whichever our traditions or none, great peace.
Go on.
That's very kind of you.